Thank you, Jesus. Glory to your name, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord God. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we just thank you. We thank you for our gathering here today. We thank you for another opportunity, Lord God, just to be able to stand before your people. Lord God, we ask you to bless each and every one that's assembled here this morning. Bless all those under the sound of my voice. Lord, touch each one. Leave no one untouched. Holy Ghost, you have my permission to use me, to speak through me, to speak to your people. You have the right of way to move however you see fit, to accomplish whatsoever you will. Lord Jesus, hide me behind your cross. Lord, let them see only you. Let them hear from you. They need a word from you. Speak to your people as only you can. Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, Lord, let them be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Praise God. We just thank God for each of you. We thank God for what he's doing. We thank God for his faithfulness. Amen. Now, one of the things that seems to continue to come back to me as of late, that God just continues to prompt my heart to talk to the people about. I mean, last Sunday we had a message where we talked about, are you ready to die? And it was one of those messages where it was God saying to us, we ought to stay in a state of readiness. But one of the things that he also began to place on my heart and prompt me to say was that obviously when you think about death, death is not the end of things. Death is really a time of transition. In the case of the Christian, you're transitioning from this dimension to the next dimension. We understand as believers that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. We understand that we transition from this life to the next, and we deal with life after death. So we are transitioning. And as I was thinking about this, he began to talk to me about transition. And saying to me that right now, our nation is in a period or time of transition. Now, some people, will say just talking about change, but specifically the word that kept coming up was transition. Now, as I began to pray and to think about this concept of transition, he said, many of us, as we're transitioning from one thing to the next, our hope and our expectation is that the transition will be smooth and easy. But oftentimes, it's not. Transitions oftentimes come as a result of struggle, as a result of chaos, as a result of confusion, as a result of trials and tribulations. You see, because oftentimes If everything is running smoothly, we don't think we need a transition. We don't need a change, if you will, because everything is running as it should be running, and we just gonna keep on doing what we've been doing, and we think that what we have been doing will never end. And God began to deal with me about how sometimes as you're getting ready, in order to prompt you and get you ready for a change or a transition, all of a sudden trouble comes, struggle comes, trials come, testing time comes. You see, if you would know that in order to get promoted from one level to another or from one grade to another, oftentimes in the parlance of students, they have to take their final exams. There's a period of testing and trials that they have to endure and pass in order to transition. And for them, the final exams are times and periods of struggle, anxiety, sometimes a little bit chaotic, and they don't know and unsure of themselves, despite someone saying, I taught you this. You've been prepared for this. You've trained for this. They still are unsure of themselves. And God is saying, you got to go through this to get to the other side. You want to get to the next level, you got to pass the test. You have to go through what you have to go through. Or as I like to say, you got to go through your go-through. And so he started dealing with me, and he took me back to 2 Timothy. Last time we were in 2 Timothy in the 2nd chapter, and he said in that very first verse, thou therefore, this is Paul, the Apostle Paul, talking to Timothy. He said, thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Then he makes this statement. He says, thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. He began to let him know that when you say, I'm a soldier, and when you are trying to prepare yourself, right, to advance and be promoted as a soldier, you're going to have to endure hardness. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to go through some things. See, a lot of folks, they don't want to be tested. They want to have all of the titles and ranks and promotions and accolades, but they don't want to endure and go through anything. They don't want to pass the test to get promoted. They don't want to go through the trials. They don't want to endure the hardness. They just want to deal with the peace and the prosperity portion and the good times. So he began to talk to me. He said, now, I want you to understand that, yes, mentorship is very important. But there comes a time when the mentor or the teacher is taken away. And you have to walk in what you have been taught and what they have trained and prepared you for. Because otherwise, you never get to a point where you take and stand up on the next level. Because you always will be looking for the other person to do and to take over and to lead the way. So sometimes I have to remove the mentor or remove the teacher so that the next group and leaders and folk who have been prepared are ready to step up and to do what God has purposed and planned for them to do. Now, the nation just lost two civil rights icons, as we like to say. We lost the Reverend C.T. Vivian on July 17th. And on the same day, we lost Congressman John Lewis. Now, these were two lions of the civil rights movement. Lieutenants for the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, these were men who were jailed and imprisoned and who participated in marches and walks and sit-ins and freedom rides and were beaten by the police. You saw John Lewis when they walked across the Pettus Bridge in Selma, and the police beat and brutalized him and cracked his skull and left him bleeding in a pool of blood. And he did all of that. And he talked about times where he was beaten and people started saying, do you want to press charges? And he said, no, we came here seeking and to dramatize the peace and change that we want. And he didn't want to press charges. And we saw these two men who had struggled and had led the way. I mean, a lot of people don't know that John Lewis was one of the ones who spoke during the March on Washington. See, we think about the March on Washington, and a lot of people think that folk just came together and heard Martin Luther King say, I have a dream, and then they left. And they don't realize that there was a whole program put on during the March on Washington, and they had a certain number of speakers, and John Lewis was one of the ones who got to speak. And then when you deal with these men, I mean, he was one of the big leaders. He at that time was big in SNCC, as they called it, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And he helped, with the civil rights movement and to push it forward, and then in Congress, and he kept on and kept pushing for change and pushing for justice. And Vivian kept pushing for change and pushing for justice. And then they had been training by their own personal example and their own personal mentoring, folk to come behind them to carry on this struggle. And a lot of folk look at what's going on in the world right now. And I heard one person said that as a result of what's going on and looking at this Black Lives Matter movement and looking at all the stuff going on with police brutality and looking at where we are in terms of all of the racial discrimination and disparities, that now we need those two more than ever. Amen. And God began to say to me, no. They had finished their course. And it was time for a transition. It was time for them to leave the scene so that the next group can step up and walk into what I have been calling them to walk in. And then he said, now remember, you've been looking at 2 Timothy. He says, go back to that 4th chapter. As Paul is talking to Timothy. Now, Paul in the 4th chapter, starting at the 1st verse, he says, I charge thee, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearance and his kingdom. Preach the Be instant, in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Now, he says, for the time will come, and I will say it is here now, when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. In other words, they're going to get people around them and surround them with folk who will tell them what they want to hear, as opposed to telling them the truth. How folks stand and just lie to you and tell you that the sky is green when you know it's blue. He says, they won't endure sound doctrine. Fourth verse, he says, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. Right? Like coronavirus is a hoax. Fables, lies. Oh, it's just a plot. Child, they trying to get us. Just lies. Turn from the truth. Won't listen to the truth. Child, you don't need to protect yourself. It's just a hoax. And folk dying every day. He said now, in the 5th verse it says, but watch thou in all things. Endure afflictions. Do the work of an evangelist. Make full proof of thy ministry. And listen to the Apostle Paul. For I am now ready to be offered. See, he was ready to die. I am now ready to be offered. And the time of my departure is at hand. You see, John Lewis probably had this same conversation with many of his folks. I heard Cory Booker say that before John Lewis passed, his staff and administrators reached out to him and said that his time of departure is soon. And we tried to make sure he had the ability to talk to some folk he wanted to talk to. And he said that he had an opportunity to have a conversation with him and just to tell him how much he loved him and respected him and how much he had inspired him. But now, John had prepared and had been working with and dealing with Cory Booker for Cory to be getting ready to step up. Amen. And I'm sure John told Cory that the time of my departure is at hand. You got to be ready. I'm ready to leave here. You got to take over. We in the midst of a transition. Reverend C.T. Vivian, who had been carrying forward the civil rights movements and protests, even well into his 90s, at 95 years old, still working with his foundation, still out there trying to bring about justice. I'm sure he had conversations to let folk know, I'm ready to be offered. Time for me to transition. I'm going from this life to the next. I'm going to glory. As I transition, the nation is transitioning, and you all are caught in the midst of a transition, and you got to step up. Now, I know you would like for the transition to be at a time where it's easy and peaceful and smooth, but he says, no. Oftentimes, these transitions come when things are rough. Yes. Mm-hmm. I remember I was, as many people did, we were looking at the dramatic production of Hamilton, which is talking about one of the founders of our nation, Alexander Hamilton. And there is this one line that stands out in the early part of the production where Alexander Hamilton meets Aaron Burr for the first time, and they're talking. And one of the things that Alexander Hamilton says is that I wish there was a war right now so that we would have an opportunity to make a name for ourselves. You see, if you want to be a great general, you can't be a great general if there's no war going on. It takes battles. It takes a war. You got to go through some things before people hang the title on you of great general. You want to be a great president, you have to have done something. Oftentimes, the people who we deem as being great in whatever, they came into prominence during a time of great turmoil and hardship, and were able to handle and navigate the difficulty. And as a result of how they handled things, they inspired people. Most of the folk who we think about as being great, everything wasn't just all smooth for them. Those people who just came in power when things were easy and smooth sailing, and they left and nothing ever happened, we don't even remember them and think about them. But now when you talk about, okay, Abraham Lincoln, we look at, Civil War, he came, he preserved the nation, right? He came into power when things were in turmoil. Everybody started seceding from the Union. And he trying to hold the country together and dealing with the original sin of the nation in terms of slavery and the treatment of his black citizens. Not considered citizens at that time, just plain old property. But it was how he navigated that time of transition which allowed him to rise to a level of prominence where they considered him to be great. Franklin Delano Roosevelt came into power while we were in the middle of the Great Depression. Led us through World War II. People talk about how great he was because of how he handled and navigated that difficult time. He wasn't the first president ever, but we look at him as being a great one. We look at George Washington as being a great president because of how he handled and dealt with the Revolutionary War as a general, and then how he dealt with the initial presidency of the United States. And said that he took power and shaped things and molded things during a time of transition. So God starts saying to me, during this time of transition, now is an opportunity for people to make a name for themselves by doing what is right, standing on what God said, and stepping up and taking your rightful place. Now is the time for leaders to be born, or for leaders to manifest themselves. You've been trained, prepared, mentored for this moment. Mentors are being taken away and leaving here every day. Now is not the time for you to bite your nails and say, I don't know what to do. They trained you and prepared you for this moment. Because they knew they weren't going to be here always. Just like Paul knew that God was going to take him home soon. And he said to Timothy, you got to prepare yourself to endure hardness like a good soldier. Now, when Paul was first called by God, after when he was still Saul of Tarsus, when he was first knocked off his beast, amen, and blinded by the light. And Paul was praying, saying, Lord, what you want me to do? Lord, show me how. Lord, teach me. Lord, show me. Lord, please. Praying praying, somebody had to come and talk to Paul. So now if you turn with me to the book of Acts real quick. Acts the 9th chapter. Starting at about the 10th verse. 9th verse. Talking about Saul, who later became Paul. 9th chapter, 9th verse, it says, "And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias, and he said, Behold, I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the street, which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayed." God's telling him, Saul's been praying. "And he has seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him, that he might receive his sight." See, some of y'all are Ananias. Y'all are supposed to go lay hands on somebody so that they can receive their sight and be able to step up and do what God called them to do. Now, look at Ananias initially. It says, "Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he hath done to thy saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name." In other words, him, Lord? Not him. Are you sure? That man has done evil. You see, God has the final say. Don't you write anybody off. Don't you say, child, he ain't no good, he can't do nothing. She ain't no good. Don't write anybody off. You could be the one that God says, go lay hands on that one. They've been praying. You don't know the full story. I'm going to use them. I got to work for them to do. All of the mentoring that they got as a child, when mama was praying and grandma was praying and the folk at church was whispering in their ear, and other people that they heard, and they ran off like that prodigal son and tried to do everything they were big enough to do. God said, now is the time for me to bring them back into the kingdom. Go lay your hands on them. Get them right so that I can put them in place to do what I have called them to do. We're in a transition. God says, I already got leaders prepared. Amen. It's now time for them to step up. Now, in the 15th verse it says, But the Lord said unto him, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and children of Israel. See, sometimes we're looking at people, you don't know what God has purpose for somebody just based on what they're doing now. We can't count anybody out. We can't write anybody off. You don't know. Hence, it doesn't matter if they're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever the race, ethnicity, we can't write anybody off. You don't know what God has for them. I'm going to put something out there that may blow some of y'all minds. You can't write them off even if they're gay, lesbian, bisexual. You can't write them off. God is able. God says, I love them all. I died for them all. I can reach them wherever they are. Don't you write somebody off. trying to say that God can't use them. God says he's able. All you need to do is introduce them to God. You do like Ananias and lay your hands on them and pray for them like God told you. That through that process they can receive sight. They can get deliverance. They can be made whole. They can have their own personal relationship with Jesus Christ. They can do exploits. In Jesus' name. Says, don't write nobody off. Child, you know, them Muslims. So, God says, I can save anybody. Child, you know, he's something else. It doesn't matter. You do what God told you to do. I mean, just remember, all the disciples, before they were Christians and apostles, they were Jews. They had, you know, they had people who were saying, Jesus, nah, he ain't the one. You can't say, well, child, because they believe that I don't even need to go talk to them. God said, no. You got to go out and preach and teach and introduce them to the gospel. Look at Saul of Tarsus. He was persecuting all those who called on the name of Christ. Now he said he was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. He was, you know, a Pharisee. He was circumcised on the 8th day. He had been taught at the feet of Gamaliel. He was, in his mind, he was doing God a service by persecuting the Jews who had called on Christ as their Lord and Savior. He thought he was doing God a service by persecuting his fellow Jews who had become Christians. And God said, look, I'm going to use him. Not only is he going to minister to other Jews who, in order to get them to become Christians, but then I'm going to send him to the Gentiles. He's going to be talking to folk who might be Muslim and folk who might be something else, whether they be Buddhists or people who have some other observance. They still caught up in idol worship. I'm going to have him go and minister to them and introduce them to the gospel of Jesus Christ. That God became a man, wrapped himself in flesh, became a man, and died for them, and then rose again, so that they could have eternal life and be reconciled to the Father. I need him to deliver that message. Don't write him out. Don't count him out, Ananias. You go talk to Saul and lay hands on him. Don't think you better than him. Don't think somehow you got all the answers and he therefore just missed it so that he going straight to hell. You're no better. Oh, he's strung out on drugs. He's just right for God to be able to get a hold of him. Child, you know she out there, she a woman of ill repute. Or some of them would like to say she a prostitute. Others just say, child, she a hoe. He said, nah, that's the one I want. You ever heard of Rahab the harlot? That's the one I want. I want to get a hold of her. You go talk to her. You lay hands on her. Don't write her off. Don't count her out. She could be in the midst of a transition. So now, here we have it, where God is talking to Ananias to get him him right to go lay hands on Saul of Tarsus. And then he drops this little line in. In the 16th verse, it says, "For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." And God starts saying, some of us, we say, "Yeah, Lord, I want to go through this transition. I want them to come lay hands on me. I think I can do something." And that. He said, "Okay, I got someone there prepared to lay hands on you. Your time is coming. You're ready for the transition. But understand that when it happens, you're going to have to go through some things. It's not going to be easy. You're not going to walk into leadership and not going to have to experience anything and go through nothing. You're not going to get to the next level and not going to be, tested and have to go through some things on that level. You have to go through your trials. Scriptures tell us, think it not strange. Because of those fiery trials that you got to go through. The trying of your faith. You won't have to go through, you'll go through. Right now, the nation is going through. Despite that we have coronavirus spiking in places and the death toll mounting, you still got folks protesting in the streets. And every time you look around, they're still finding more videos of police brutality and somebody else getting killed and unfairly treated in Hamilton. We still see incidents of racism, sexism, and all kinds of other isms and discrimination. And God starts saying, look, during this time period of great turmoil and trials and testing, as new folk are coming up, in the same way that Alexander Hamilton in that play was saying, "I wish we had a battle right now to make our name," he says, now is the time for many of you to make a name. To take on some leadership roles. To show that you have the desire, the work ethic, to make a change. You are the change that you've been looking for. Stop waiting around. My son was playing a video game the other day. And in the playing of the game, there was this character who sometimes would jump in and try to help as he was trying to defeat this foe. And he was getting frustrated because the character didn't jump in as often as he would like. And I began to say to him, I said, look, you got to play this game as if though nobody's coming to help. I said, now if they come in and help you, all the better. Thank God for it. But keep on. But don't you go into the game thinking, I'm going to get this help. Say it's just me and God doing this. As we begin to say, look, as I rise to whatever level God is calling me to, Lord, I'm depending on you and you alone. You alone are my source, my strength, my shield, my sword. You're my everything. Now, if you send me an ally, if you send somebody in to help me, I thank you for them. But if you don't send me nobody, Lord, I'm going to go through with you alone. I can't design my life based on somebody else coming to help me. I'm going to look to the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made the heaven and the earth. We got to say, Lord, as I'm going through my transition, as you've taken leaders from me and taken mentors from me and all of a sudden thrust me into different positions. Lord, I need you now more than ever. For some of us, Ananias done did his job and laid hands. God is now saying, step out and do what I called you to do. It's time for you to work and deal with this transition. You're in the midst of it now. Now is the time when names and reputations are made. People looking at you and say, yeah, child, he a good one, or she a good one, or they a leader. Look at how they taking over. You can see some young people out there now in the midst of these protests. Some of them will take a bullhorn and get to talking and commanding the crowd, stepping up into leadership roles. John Lewis can't come and be out there in the march right now. God done took Lewis home. He put his time in. The Reverend C.T. Vivian can't go and be in a march right now. But you can march. You can be involved. You can make a difference. You can bring about the change you want to see and see. And you can lead the movement. As opposed to sitting on the sideline and just criticizing. Child, I sure wish they'd do something, but you're not doing a thing. You so busy worried about the other person who you think gonna come in and help you. And you need to be helping yourself. So he starts saying, look, as we think about people who are leaving this place, folk dying, folk transitioning, people who are ready. Amen. There is the, yes, I'm ready to die, meaning I'm ready to leave and transition and go be with my Lord. Mm-hmm. But not only that, are you ready for others to die and leave you still here? Are you ready to continue the work after God has moved them on? Are you ready to be like the Elisha to Elijah and say, Lord, when you take Elijah home, I can pick up his mantle and carry on? Can you be the Joshua to Moses? And when Moses is taken up out of the way, can you then cross that Jordan and lead the people in your own right? Not only are you ready to leave here, but are you ready when others have to leave and leave you behind? Are you ready to continue the work in the struggle? Are you ready to make a difference? One of the things we talked about in our Sunday school this morning is that the divine command that God gave us, going all the way back to the time when he formed the man, was for us to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. He pretty much told us, he said, I want you to be productive. God expects for us to be productive, to transact business, and to do what he called us to do as long as we are here. And he said, I will make sure that you have what you need to be productive if you are trusting me. So whatever it is, God does not reward idleness. He doesn't reward spectators. He awards and rewards the man who is called to the arena, who steps in, who fights, who toils, who struggles. He gives seed to the sower. He gives provision to the one who's doing something. Not the one who's just sitting. It's easy to sit and criticize and just talk on the sideline. Get up, roll up your sleeves, and go do something. It's the reason why scriptures tell us if you don't work, you don't eat. and do something. He expects for you to be productive. So while we are transitioning, now is the time for working. Now is the time for being productive. Now is the time to make sure that we walk into the roles that we were destined to walk into, called to walk into. Lead like God has called us to lead. Do what God has called us to do. Support and to aid and to help others. God wants us to make sure that we are teaching and preaching and speaking the word and not counting anybody out. Trying to help everybody. Because we all got to come up together. Don't leave anybody out. Whether they're handicapped or not. Don't leave out the blind, the lame, the maimed, those in a wheelchair, or whatever the case might be. God says, I can use them. We're in the midst of a transition. Our nation is in the midst of a transition. As we are fighting and battling for the soul of the nation. We're in the midst of a transition. And it behooves each and every one of us to step up and to do our part. To say, Lord, I want to be used. And I know I may have to suffer some things. I may have to go through my go-through. I got to put my time in. I got to endure hardness like a good soldier. I got to fight. I can't just sit on the sideline and criticize. I got to be the man in the arena. I got to step out like Teddy Roosevelt said. I got to be the man out there in the arena doing and struggling and trying to bring about the change I want to see. Lord, I want to do what you called me to do. I want to be all that you called me to be. I want to make sure that as we transition, that I step into everything that you called me to. So during this time, as we deal with transition, as we deal with people leaving here, now is the time for us to focus on what God is saying to us. As he's calling us by name, like he called Saul and said, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It's hard for you to kick against the pricks. It's hard for you to go and do your own thing and not do what I called you to do. It's hard for you to try to ignore all the things that I have prepared for you. Your life could be so much better if you would just submit to God's will and do what God is calling you to do. And if you have to endure some things, he says, I'll give you provision. And I'll enable you to do what I'm calling you to do. He said to Paul, when Paul was complaining at one point, he said, my grace is sufficient. So I'll give you the grace to go through. I'll give you the grace to endure. I'll give you the grace to become what I've called you to become. But you got to be ready. Ready to embrace the transition. And step up and step out and do. Just like Peter, you got to get out. You want to walk on water? Like Peter, you got to get out the boat. You got to step out. God is calling us to a higher place. It's time, saints. We're in transition. And it's time for us to step up and step out. Amen? Amen.